The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we will cover Austin FC's Leagues Cup loss to Mazatlan. We'll preview the upcoming Leagues Cup match against FC Juarez, and then we will also talk about the possibility of a new center back and some other Austin FC news. My name is Landon, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I, for the second year in a row, are coming to you from a condo in Destin, Florida. So happy to be by the beach, but also happy to be joining you and talking a little bit of soccer. I think you had like family game time last week. Is that right? You want to share that experience?
That's right. The last few years, we've been keeping our nieces for a few days in the summer, and it's generally just been the two older ones. Now the youngest one is 5 years old, and that has been the rule that when you turn 5, you can start coming during the summer. And so we had a 14-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 5-year-old with us from Thursday until this morning, and took them to the game with us. Not the most fun game to go to with Uncle Landon. I probably taught them a few words that they hadn't heard very often before. So that was a little disappointing, but overall the weekend was great. And we had a nice time, and they didn't really care that much about the game anyway. So that was good.
Did y'all feel exhausted this morning?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we do not have kids. And so this is a major lifestyle shift for us whenever they come to town, especially with all three of them. Like the 14-year-old, like she's like pushing towards adulthood, and we can like, I don't know, we can treat her a little differently than the others, but a 5-year-old running around the house is a different story, man.
I remember those days.
All right, let's jump into some Austin FC news. So let's talk a little bit about the All-Star game. We had John Gallagher there representing Austin FC. We had Damian Loss there in the goalie wars during the skills competition, and then Irvin Torres played in the MLS Next All-Star game. So in the big show, MLS lost 5-0 to Arsenal. Did you get a chance to watch this, Jeremiah?
I mean, I had to watch. Yes, I got the chance to watch it. I did not enjoy what I saw at all.
Yeah, I mean,
but I saw some of it.
We talked about like whether or not this was a good idea to play a big European team, and I was like kind of defending this setup, and I want to take all of that back. Like this was I think they probably got what they wanted as far as like engagement goes, because like I said like last week, for MLS fans, like engaged MLS fans, I think the like East-West thing would be more fun, or like even the Liga MX thing. I think that was a lot of fun as well, and the players were really engaged in that, and it's a competitive game. But I know in the past, playing these European teams, they've played B teams, rotated squads or whatever, and come in and not really tried, and MLS could kind of compete a little bit. Arsenal was not pulling punches in this game. They played a really strong 11, and they were giving it their all during this game, which was what led to the end result, which was 5-0. And I mean, it wasn't a very good advertisement for MLS in general.
No, I felt like that was the worst possible of all the outcomes we discussed for MLS. And I wondered a little bit. It was good to see that Arsenal was trying, because at first I was like, man, if they roll out a B team and like clobber MLS that way, that's really like it's a really bad effort. But John Gallagher got the captain's band in his time on the field. Were you surprised to see that?
I was, yeah, that's interesting. Like for a guy who's not a big name in the league, I haven't heard anything about like what the story behind that was. I'd be curious to know if he just came into camp and Rooney was impressed by him, or what the deal was there. But to see him wearing the armband, yeah, it made me proud of him, because he's a guy that, like, again, doesn't get a ton of recognition, has fought for everything he's gotten. And so to see him get to wear that on the field was really cool. As far as his performance goes, I thought he did okay. He was fine. I think there were some of the MLS guys who stood out, and probably like people tuning in just to watch Arsenal saw some of them, were like, oh, this guy's okay. And like the first, I don't know, the first little stretch of the game, they didn't look so, it wasn't like an embarrassing game yet, but it kind of
Yet.
turned into that after a little while. Gallagher's performance was fine. He was okay. There was involved in a couple of the goals. I think the first one, maybe you can chalk up to just like not playing with these guys and kind of being out of position. The next one was a cross that just kind of went over his head and fell behind him. And the guy behind him finished it. But I mean, he did fine. Like, I don't think he specifically embarrassed himself. I think that was kind of a team effort, but John did fine. And in the end, it was still cool to see him wear the armband and get to represent the team there.
Well, we got some news about a potential player coming in. This is from Tom Bogert.
Oh, wait, I wanted to say one more thing about the All-Star game. Damian Loss was taking the goalie wars very seriously. Some of the guys were kind of joking and laughing, and Damian Loss got really upset about was yelling at the officials at one point during the final. And then like the other guy was kind of joking and laughing. Damian Loss was dead serious. And like the cameras were kind of like coming up to a close up at one point, and he like waved him away. He's like, get out of here. I'm trying to win. And so I thought that was funny. And then Irvin Torres in the MLS Next game, he played the second half. And like he was playing as kind of a deep six and not really getting to join in the attacking five as often, but showed pretty well. I thought he looked solid, and especially this was like not by age groups, and so this was all MLS Next players, including some like U19 players and some guys who have spent most of the year in Next Pro playing like second team minutes. And so to see Irvin Torres, one of the youngest players out there, still just 15, I think, playing with these guys and looking like he belongs and looking like a good player, that was really great. So a good showing from him. Okay, now we can move into transfer news.
Transfer news. This is from Tom Bogert. This is supposedly Matt Hedges will be coming in from Toronto for $500K in GAM. At least 3-time All-Star. So there's our All-Star game tie. You, I think, have done a fair amount of research on Matt Hedges. So talk about what kind of player he is and maybe how he would fit into the Austin roster as it's constructed right now.
Yeah, so Matt Hedges, 33-year-old center back, 6'3". He's drafted by FC Dallas out of University of North Carolina as the Freddie Kleeman pick is what I'm going to call it, which is the number 11 overall pick. You want to guess who was taken immediately before him in that draft, Jeremiah? Which Austin FC player was taken immediately before him in that draft?
Jossie Zardes.
It was Ethan Finley at number 10 by the Columbus Crew.
That's a nice bit of trivia.
Yeah. So he played 10 seasons at FC Dallas, is their all-time appearances leader, and was a captain for 8 of those 10 years. Just last year at the end of the season was listed as one of the like the most sought after free agents in the league. And on, I think MLSsoccer.com put out a list and had kind of ranked free agents, and he was second on that list only after Alexander Collins, who we talked a lot about on this show. But yeah, Matt Hedges was second on that list and ended up going to Toronto. By all accounts, I haven't gotten to watch a ton of Toronto this year, but by all accounts, when he's on the field, he has been their best defender by far, even in kind of a mess of a team and a rotating cast around. And they've had defenders get injured. They've had guys, I think Lorea's loan ended recently, and a lot of players moving in and out of the 11. And when he was in there, he's looked like their best defender by a pretty wide margin, which goes to say, like, why is a guy like him available right now? Like, do you have any thoughts on why he might be available, Jeremiah, after he just joined Toronto not long ago?
Yeah. So do we know the details of his contract with Toronto? I mean, we're assuming it's multi-year, right? So it's not like
through 24 with an option year in 25.
Okay, so it's not that a club's just trying to get what they can out of a guy before he's gone. I don't know. That roster is a complete mess, and they need some flexibility. So maybe that seems like he's an attractive piece you can offload to somebody else. to clear some space and add some additional GAM. Maybe that's it. And also the injury bug thing, like you said, he's great when he's on the field. And he has not been on the field a lot this year, which worries me a little bit coming into Austin, where there's a whole rash of guys who are not on the field a lot.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think there's maybe some reading some stuff from Toronto. There's a thought that maybe he was one of Bradley's guys that he brought in, and they've cleared out a few of those pieces that maybe were picks for Bob Bradley once Bradley gets fired. And it's also, I think, because of his age, that's kind of like a win now kind of signing, as far as like a build for the future kind of signing. And so if you're a Bradley guy and it's a win now signing and Bradley's gone and you're not winning now, then yeah, maybe the GAM is more valuable at this point than whatever he can offer you on the field. And so to get 500K GAM for a guy you signed for free 6 months ago is pretty good business on their end. And I'm guessing maybe with all the mess there, a guy who's lived in Texas his whole career, moved far away from friends and family, and is playing in what seems to be a pretty bad team culture. I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Hedges was pretty eager to get out of there as well.
If he just wants out, that makes sense too.
So Matt Hedges is probably not a household name to like newer MLS fans, people who have just started paying attention since Austin FC started, but he's like been quietly one of the best defenders in the league for pretty much his whole career. He's I was looking through MLSsoccer.com, finding just like little stories about him throughout the past. And one of the articles was a list of 10 players that you can't imagine playing in another jersey. And he was listed on there as like, I can't imagine him playing in anywhere but FC Dallas, which is pretty funny now that he's being linked with Austin. And out of that list, 5 of those players have now moved on. And one of them, this was long enough ago, one of those players was Matt Beasler. And so Austin is potentially getting 2 of the guys that this article writer, it might have been Matt Doyle, but was like, couldn't imagine playing for another team, which is pretty funny. Talking about his being prone to injury, he's really only missed significant stretches of games, like once, I think twice now in his career. And it's not been the same injury over and over, which is maybe something to be hopeful about. I think the concerning part there is that this latest one has kept him out for a couple of different stretches during this season, the year in which he is 33 years old. And so let's hope that Austin FC looking into this is confident about his recovery in this. I know like Sean Rubio probably still has some connections in Toronto. I'm sure other people in the Austin FC staff have connections there. And so hopefully they're doing their homework. And if this is going to go through, that they are confident that whatever this injury is, it's not anything super serious. But I know, like looking back in the past, like one of his recent outings this year was with a concussion. He had gotten a concussion, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and missed a few games. And then other than that, has not really missed a lot of time during his career. So I'm hoping that this is not like being injury prone and more just bad luck in this one season. As far as like who he is as a player, like how exactly do you feel about like what problems he solves for this team?
Yeah, I mean, one, just talent and depth is obviously the biggest problem this team has at center back. And especially with the news that we got about how much longer Vicenen is going to be out, right? Because it seems like this injury is going to be even longer than we thought. So there's that. You know, I mean, seeing Kip be an adventure every time he's back there playing is sort of scary. So I would just think like just any warm body that's a talent at this point is an addition.
Yeah, and talking about being nervous when guys on the field, we talk about a lot of our guys like Julio Cascante, Leo Vicenen. Like the first thing we say about these guys is they're really good on the ball. And then the defense, and I think we're just talking about Austin FC in general, is like the defense is a bit of an afterthought. Matt Hedges is a capital D defender. Like he is above average on the ball. He is quite good on the ball, actually, but he is a defender. Like he knows what his job is, and he's been quite good at it for the last 10 years. So I think there's a slight concern about the age, and like we talked about the injuries, but if and when we have like the length of the contract is a little concerning as well. It's not that long, but when you get into having a guy, we've talked about this with Zardes, like a guy who just seemed to age overnight as soon as we signed him. And then if that happens to Hedges after this injury and we're locked into him for another year on a decent salary, which I think is like 770 some odd thousand, which for a guy of his experience, of his career, like that's not a terrible price. But if he ends up not being that good, it is a pretty high price. And so, but if we can get a rotation of Cascante, Väisänen, and Matt Hedges all together, like either playing in a back three or rotating in and out for one another, that is a really good group. I don't know. He's lost a little bit of a step, but he's so smart and experienced. And I watched some Y Scout clips of the games he played in this year. And there are a few moments where he's going head to head with like a quick winger and gets beat a little bit, but more often than not, he's in the right place at the right time, doesn't let a guy turn on him, cuts out a pass before it ever develops, is making a run to cut off something before anybody else ever notices it. And so even though he does get beat for speed occasionally, he's such a smart and experienced defender that I think even in the state he is right now, coming into this team, he will probably be the best defensive center back that has ever played for Austin FC.
That will be our friend Brian Mangum. That will probably warm his heart to hear that about Hedges, that Austin's finally engaging and investing in a guy that actually plays defense.
Yeah, and exactly. Brian likes to get on Julio all the time for lack of defensive awareness, and for some reason defends Johan Romagna, which is a whole other discussion. Where he, in the same breath, will defend Johan Romagna's defensive awareness and criticize Julio Cascante's for some reason. But Matt Hedges is not a guy that is ever an issue with. Like, he is keyed in and very aware of what is going on around him at all times, which is encouraging. As far as the value goes, I mean, $500K in GAM, sending him that way, $770 some odd $1,000 in salary. Do you feel like this is a decent value for him? I kind of do.
I mean, I'm not at all worried about the GAM. I mean, we talked about sort of GAMflation and how the numbers get bigger all the time just because there's more GAM in the league. I'm not worried about that. If he is healthy, I'm not concerned about that. But I think you hit on the point where if he ages overnight or if he's not playing, then that becomes like another contract that's a burden. But I'm not super worried about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you were to bring in someone of his caliber from overseas, the transfer fee would be way higher. The salary would probably be higher. And this kind of like that domestic discount you get with a lot of MLS guys who have stuck around their whole career, that if they had a different name and were from a different country, they probably cost twice as much. But because they've always been here, you can kind of keep them around for cheaper for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, this one was not a Burrell signing, but do you want to talk about this Rodolfo Burrell interview with Pablo Maurer in The Athletic?
Oh yeah. It was interesting. It was kind of just like you see The Athletic post these interviews quite a bit, and a lot of what he said was, if you'd paid attention to the other interviews he's done so far, not all of it was entirely new, but there were a few parts that stood out about it. And one of them was, let's see, Pablo asked him about what he thought of the league, like what is how much he knew about the league or something like that. And Burrell casually drops like, oh yeah, since 2015, when I first got approached about a job, I've been staying up until like 2 a.m. and then started watching the Western Conference a few years later and staying up until 6 a.m. watching MLS like regularly. Like, not, I've done that a couple of times. Like, I've been doing that for the last 7 or 8 years. And I thought that was awesome. Like, we are concerned about a guy coming in and like thinking he knows best because he's played or coached at these really high levels, and he seems to have a lot of humility about that. It's like, I am a guy who does the work. I take my job very seriously, and I do everything I can to make sure I'm very good at it. And he's been preparing for 8 years for a job that he didn't have yet. And he just kind of thought like, maybe I'll get a job in MLS one time. So I better stay up until 6 in the morning and watch every game, which I love. I love that about him.
Yeah, and he specifically talked about knowing that he can't come in as a person who treats MLS as an inferior league. That's probably from that experience. But he talked about how he knew he needed to be humble and needed to put in the effort, which I loved.
The other part that stood out to me is that he kind of doubled down on his endorsement of Wolf, and he said not entirely unprompted, but Pablo did not ask the question like, "How do you rate Josh Wolf?" or "What are your?" He just like mentioned Wolf's name, and Burrell said, "If Josh wouldn't have been the head coach right now, I would not be joining Austin FC." And he said, "I didn't need a job. It wasn't like I was out of a job and needed to have this thing. I wanted to take the right job. And part of the reason why I thought Austin was the right job is because Josh Wolf is the coach." And I thought that stood out. The fact that like we all said, like in the initial press conference, like, of course he's going to say that, like, he's got to say that, but to bring it up unprompted again and double down and go out of his way to say that this is one of the big reasons why I'm here. I think that means something. And I don't think it necessarily means that like Josh Wolf is the best coach and he is the exact right guy for what I want to do. I don't think it necessarily means that, but I do think it means like Burrell didn't want to take over any team and try to implement this style of play from scratch and kind of play the way that he wanted to play in like the Manchester City, Barcelona way at any team. He knows that Josh Wolf has been implementing that at every level of the club for the last 3 years. And so by coming into that system that's already in place, he can just make little tweaks and kind of improve what's already happening as opposed to starting from scratch. And I think that has as much to do with why Josh Wolf was important to this decision as it is about Josh Wolf as a coach himself.
Yeah, he talked a lot about identity and the importance of a club having an identity, and that came through, and this club definitely has one. Did you watch this bananas Austin FC 2 Colorado match when the nieces were in town, or
I had it on? I watched pretty intently most of the first half, and then as the second half was going, we were like trying to wrangle them to do something, I don't know, I think going to dinner or something like that. And so the second half I was not paying as close of attention. So didn't quite see like exactly why things went wrong, but 3-0 at half, it ends 3-3. Just kind of all of a sudden it was like, I don't really know how that happened, but it was wild.
Yeah, these second half goals, like there's a PK, it's a Czech Toure own goal, and then Austin ends up not getting the second point in the shootout. But it's disappointing since it was on the road and it was a chance to pick up points against the Rapids. But I would imagine that's a learning experience, if nothing else.
Yeah, you think so. And like watching the game, it was like Colorado's supposed to be the best team in the league. Like, how is this happening? And then the second half comes around. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. One takeaway I did that I thought was interesting is a few, like David Rodriguez has been out with an unspecified injury for several games now. And so missing him on the wing, they've been playing Micah Burton there quite a bit for the last few games. And I don't think he's looked very good playing on the wing so far. In this game, they swapped Valentin Noel and Micah Burton. Micah Burton was playing as one of the dual tins alongside Steve Louis-Jean. And then Val Noel was playing on the right wing, and he was kind of operating as like that Diego Fagundes playmaking winger kind of role. And then Micah was playing inside and kind of combining with him there. And it worked really well in the first half. And so I'm curious if that was something that we'll talk about Noel getting his debut for the Austin FC first team. But I'm curious if that's a thing that they're trying to get him work on, because that's where they maybe see his way into the first team, or if they just thought like tactically for that game or for going forward, like that's going to be the right combination, is just switching those two guys and seeing how it works. But yeah, it looked a lot better than it has with Micah on the field in the last few games.
Well, that's good. Well, you ready to take a break, and then we're going to get into this Mazatlan performance of sorts?
Yeah, I guess we have to. So we'll take a short break and come right back to talk about that one.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FBF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to FBF.law to find out what makes FBF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FBF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. Amplify's team lives and works in the community, making them the experts on how members can achieve their financial goals.
What makes Amplify different? No bank fees. Amplify is the first financial institution in Texas to put an end to bank fees. In 2022, Americans paid almost $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. Millennials paid an average $336 a year in bank fees, which works out to 6 Austin FC game tickets per person per season. You'll pay none of those bank fees with Amplify Credit Union.
How many land sharks does that buy you on the beach in Destin, Jeremiah?
About 25, I think. On the beach, at beach price.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident, even if they're on vacation in Florida. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower. All right, we are back to talk about Austin FC's first ever Leagues Cup match against Mazatlan. Austin came into this game. We just say the score. It ended up 3-1. The first little stretch of this game did not feel like that was going to be what happened. I don't know how you felt about it, but I thought Austin kind of controlled the game for the first little bit of it. Mazatlan was struggling to gain momentum, and like the Austin FC quote unquote system seemed to be working, not in so much as like we are getting a lot of really good shots on goal or anything like that, but we were getting into good spots where there were opportunities to get in behind, to make plays, to and there were some opportunities to get some good shots, and just several times we either didn't execute well enough when we did get into that final move, or we would have the opportunity to move into an area and not see a pass or not have enough effort or urgency to benefit from being in those areas. And that happened over and over and over for the first 20 or 30 minutes. As we're going into halftime, Mazatlan starts to show a little bit more confidence. They get a little bit more momentum. And going into halftime, although it was 0-0, it started to make me very nervous that Austin had kind of squandered its chance to take advantage of them struggling to get into the game early on. And we talked about that with that Kansas City game, how they had rotated. Austin needs to take advantage of their best players not being in the field. Mazatlan also rotated in this game. It's like 3 to 5 guys who have not been starting for them that started in this game, including their captain, who's a center back, who I don't think ever came on in this game. But in against Sporting Kansas City, Austin was able to take advantage, get some early goals, and see out the rest of the game. They did not do it, and I think it came down to sharpness and execution and effort, just straight up effort. There's I'm going to pick on Adam Lundqvist here, not to say that he's the only guy who played poorly or did not show enough effort. I think you could say that about almost every player on the field. But an example for Lundqvist was he played it out wide to, I think, Fagundes. And, often one of the fullbacks will play it wide and then make that underlapping run and kind of run up the field in behind. And he makes that run, is not making it super quickly, but there's space there. And Fagundes sees the space and sees the run and plays the ball. But Lundqvist was just kind of jogging and not really he was kind of going, it seemed like he was going through the motions. Like, I'm supposed to make this run now, but I don't actually want the ball. I don't actually want to get the ball in behind. I'm just going to run and make a little bit of space, and Diego can play it behind me and someone else can do it. And I felt like there was a lot of that kind of mentality in the first half for Austin, as it's like, I'm a little bit tired. It's really hot. I'll go through the motions, but we seem to be doing okay enough that like, it'll be fine. We'll end up pulling this one out. And it didn't go that way, because like Mazatlan came into it Austin started to flag as the game went on, got really tired. Mazatlan just didn't seem to. They got more confidence, more momentum, and they get that goal right after the second half starts, and everything changes from there.
Yeah, especially, well, I guess I don't know if we want to get into the goals now, but yeah, the second, like you said, the second half, like Austin was flagging, the effort wasn't there. And then, once the goal finally comes, Austin gets punched in the mouth, and like whatever excitement, momentum comes right out of it. But yeah, it was disappointing overall. Like they didn't create a lot of opportunities. Austin only got, well, I guess each team only got 10 shots. Mazatlan 5 on target, Austin only 3, and just the attack with some good reason, because there were a lot of pieces missing in the attack, but like the attack was just not crisp at all.
Yeah. Let's actually go back and talk about the lineup before we get into the goals. So Stuver in goal. The back line was mostly the same, with Cascante and Keller as the center backs, Nick Lima as your right back. And then since Sean Gallagher had been away at All-Star and played 45 minutes midweek, they wanted to rest him a little bit. So they played Adam Lundqvist. Danny Pereira and Sebastian Driussi were not in the game day 23. So your central midfielders were Valencia and Wolf, and then Fagundes moved inside to play that Driussi role. And then you had Zardes as the 9, and then Redes and Finley as your wingers. Looking at the rest of the bench, we had Valentin Noel, Damian Loss, and CJ Fodre all in from Austin FC 2. Noel ended up actually seeing the field, which was, I guess, one consolation from the night to see him make his debut.
Yeah.
And then, but like,
not that he did a whole lot, but it was cool that he made it.
But like looking at this 11, there was a lot of talk about like rotating and maybe like not throwing the game, but not playing your strongest 11 just to kind of like save legs. And that's not what they did, right? It was not like our best 11, but it was the best available 11.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nobody on the bench that I would have put in other than Gallagher, who was just traveling back, other than the guys that were in the game. So I really think it should have been an 11 that was better than Mazatlan.
Yeah, and again, like they were better for. I want to say I don't remember exactly how long this went, but I want to say like 20 or 30 minutes. They were the better team, and this doesn't. I know like a loss in a tournament like this is going to have the Wolf Out crowd fired up, but as far as like playing, like putting a team on the field and the tactics that we rolled out, I don't think there was anything wrong with any of that. Like the system was working. The players were just not showing the effort or the sharpness to execute against it. I guess there's an argument to be made for like motivation in these tournaments, for whatever reason. Austin FC has been very bad in these extra tournaments and have not been able to get up for the occasion. And I think it would be fair to include Wolf in the blame for that part of it, but it wasn't like he put out a 2 rotated squad. It wasn't like the tactics weren't the right thing, because they were working for a while. It was straight up execution. And I think you could probably say like the roster rotated itself with injuries, right? Like not having Vicenen, not having
right.
Driussi or Pereira in there. As the game went on, like that started to show more than anything is like we can't be very good without most of those 3 guys, like Fagundes, Stuver, Pereira, Driussi. Like if we're missing 2 or more of those guys, we're in a rough spot.
Yeah, and I think that honestly speaks more to the roster build and maybe the reason that Burrell is here than anything else, anything about the coach, at least at this point.
Yeah, I think that's true. All right, let's get into these goals. So the first one comes in the 49th minute. There's a cross from the left-hand side that gets headed out by Cascante, but not very far. Falls to Josue Colman, who had a really good night. Colman was really good for Mazatlan for this whole game, really. He's ends up able to dribble through a couple of players. Nobody can win the ball off of him. Gets a really quick, hard shot off to the far corner that I think probably there's some traffic in the box. We had enough numbers there to stop it and just like well executed by Coman, but you'd hope for like Valencia slides in and misses the ball, and Coman's able to dribble around him. You'd hope for them to be able to do a little bit better, but I think because of that traffic, it kind of backfires and catches Brad Stuver a little bit blind. Really hard, well placed shot to the back, like the back top corner, and Stuver can't save it. And yeah, after that, you see Mazatlan's confidence just go way up, and like the goals change games thing is very, very true. And we saw it in this game where they looked like they were not going to give up after that, and they didn't. And just the energy momentum, like Austin looked leggy for the whole game, but after that it just got even worse. Almost got bailed out in the 65th minute with a Diego Fagundes penalty. It was some nice combination play on the right side between Finley, Wolf, and Lima. That finds Ethan Finley in behind, goes in on like kind of a 50-50 with Bayo, their left winger, I think it was. It was a fair challenge at first, but then Bayo falls to the ground, and his feet kind of catch Finley's heel from behind. Finley goes down. Like Ethan Finley did make a bit of a meal of this, but I think with the contact there, they went to VAR, ended up giving the penalty. It's like not a hard foul, but I think from what we saw, I think it's one that you almost have to give, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. And it was not given on the field originally, right? Was it the VAR?
It was not. Yeah, VAR had
okay.
to give it. Yeah.
But when you see him, I think he caught him maybe even the calf with both feet. So when you see it in slow motion on replay, I do think it becomes obvious that it is a play that deserves that kind of call. But also a lot of fortune for Austin to get there. Although we'll see here in a minute, they didn't take great advantage of it.
Yeah. Diego Fagundes beats the keeper with his shot. Guessed the right way, but just a really well placed take. Beats the keeper, celebrates in the keeper's face. Did you have any problem with it? I know there's like some backlash online with Fagundes and Austin FC were catching some heat from the Mazatlan community for various reasons. Do you have any problem with Diego celebrating in the guy's face there?
I've got no problem with that. It's sport. It's competition. It's fine.
Yeah. He said, I saw him post on Twitter later on saying that like the keeper was talking trash and was like stepping up to the spot and trying to like intimidate him and all that. And so I don't have any problem with it. Fagundes is the kind of guy that like he'll dish it out, but I think he's a guy who can take it as well. And so I think Fagundes knows going into it that like this could come back and bite me, but I'm fine with that. I'll take that when it comes.
And he'll take the risk. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that situation, I'm fine with it. 2 minutes later, it seems like we get that goal and I'm like, this is the moment. Like we can come back and do this. And Austin FC just did not have any energy. We're not showing any urgency. And they're able to get in behind us. They get to the inline. There's a cutback. Owen Wolf has a really poor clearance on that cutback pass. It falls to Montano. And it's like in the area where had Owen Wolf not been on the ground making a poor clearance, he would have been the guy to kind of close that down. And by making the poor clearance, puts himself in a tough situation. Montano takes one touch, kind of touches it across his body, takes a left-footed shot towards the near post and puts it into the back of the net. And I've seen some criticism of Stuver for this game. If you watch his posture on the replay just before this shot goes off, there's like one angle they showed on the replay from behind, and you can see him kind of up on his toes and kind of like moving his head over to the side. I think he had a hard time seeing what was happening with the ball and had guys towards his back post. And so he couldn't cheat one way or the other too much. And the shot gets taken quickly. And so I think I'll give Stuver the benefit of the doubt there just for how good he usually is, to say that he was probably caught a little bit blind there. Maybe he could have done better on it. I don't know, but it was a hard, well-placed shot. I think it was going to be hard to stop regardless. And if it catches you a little bit blind, even harder then.
Yeah, on this one, I'm surprised it was 2 minutes later. It seemed like the ball, like they pulled the ball out of the back of the net almost and went straight down the field. because it was just such a momentum killer. That was one of those where like the stands had not finished celebrating the previous goal when suddenly the Austin was back down 2-1. And I think you're right. Like it just really sucked the energy out of the club. Not that there's one, I guess at least one other decent chance here that we need to talk about.
Yeah, so in the 72nd minute, there's a well-worked play that finds Hedges driving into the box. He plays a low hard ball into the 6-yard box that finds Bruin, and he stretches out a leg and puts it in. Watching the replay, he's like a yard and a half offside. And so that, like, the stadium erupted, and then as soon as we saw the flag, deflated again. But watching it back, like, Bruin needs to be more aware on that. Like, he
wasn't even close,
and he has a view of all the defenders, so it's not like he didn't know who was there. He's running for 6 or 7 yards offside and doesn't hold up, doesn't like check back at all. And what's even more frustrating is the same, like Rodney Hedges plays that same ball and Will Bruin jumps over it or just falls back out of the formation there. I think that exact same ball finds Diego Fagundes at the back post, who was making a run and was onside. And so that it's like, it's hindsight's 2020 here, but it's frustrating to see Bruin be so far offside and like not even clock it or try to check back or slow up his run a little bit there.
Yeah. And then that was kind of it. Mazatlan would pick up another goal.
Yeah, it kind of didn't matter at that point though, right?
It's kind of a mess. Yeah. Yeah. I think the only thing, Owen was really bad overall. I feel like Owen was really bad on this goal specifically too.
Yeah, this one, it's like legs as dead as they've been throughout the whole game. Austin FC attacking plays busted on their end. Mazatlan counters, and we've got like 3 or 4 guys back. The rest of the recovery is so slow. Everyone's coming back really slowly, and Mazatlan has 3 or 4 players in the end with Austin on their heels. And there's some like, I think everyone thinks there's like options in the middle uncovered. And so everyone's waiting for a cutback. And instead they cleverly slip a ball in behind for Bayo. And it looks like he's offside to start with, but on the replay, Owen Wolf's heel is keeping him on just because he was a little bit slow to catch up with the rest of the line stepping to make that offside line. And they didn't even go to review on this, like that, which really confused me in the stadium at the time. But they called offside. The ref had his finger to his ear and then just gave the goal, which really confused me. But I mean, looking at the replay, I understand why. It was very clearly still onside. But yeah, I mean, that was the end of the game. But like, really, it didn't feel like we were going to come back from that. On Twitter after the game, I was criticizing the referee, and I had some people talk about like some of the calls that they got right. And I was like, oh no, I didn't think they got everything wrong, but there were some really egregious things throughout the night that like, I don't think changed the game. Like, I'm not the kind of person to say if we'd have gotten this one call, like that would have been the difference. And I think if we'd have gotten all of these calls, like 5 or 6 of these that I thought were egregiously incorrect, I still think we would have lost. But it's still frustrating to watch. Like, professional referees get this many calls wrong. There was 2 or 3 like yellow card worthy fouls. One, or I think in the first half, Finley beats a guy like at the edge of the box, is cutting in on his left foot and has guys in the box, has an angle to shoot. And this guy just grabs his jersey and falls down, and they call nothing. Like, that is a clear yellow. And the ref is not far from it. The assistant ref is like right on line with it, looking at it. No call. There's another one where a guy comes through and cleans out Owen Wolf, and the center ref had his back to it and like kind of watched the ball go away. But the linesman was right there looking right at it. And like, it looked like the linesman was like making eye contact with the center ref after it. And it looked like they kind of had an exchange, and it just let it go. And it's like, you have to stop play there. Like, it's amazing that you see that and just say, no, this is fine. We'll let it go. And I think it ended up, it was like a dangerous chance on the other end for Mazatlan. And then talking about, this is less about this game specifically, but just refereeing in general, where in the second half, there's 4 goals. There's a water break. There's 2 VAR checks. And then a moment for a while where the ref seemed to just be like meandering around the field for 3 or 4 minutes, not really doing anything and not letting play go on, not letting subs come in. And whenever they hold up the added time sign, it says 6. And like, you remember in the last World Cup where they were like being really like to the T with extra time, and you're getting 10,
You think that's
12
like a 12
minutes.
minute? Yeah.
Yeah, this would have been a 12-minute in the World Cup, and we got 6, which again, I don't think it would have mattered. I think Austin would have lost this one, but it's really frustrating to see refs be so poor at their job.
Yeah. Who else? So who performed well? So the refs are bad. The attack was bad. Owen Wolf was pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I thought almost everyone was bad. Johan Valencia, I thought, had a decent game. He was being pretty disruptive in the midfield at times. Decent game, progressing the ball. Going into the next player I'm going to talk about, I think when we talk about performances, it's all relative to the player oftentimes when we do this. And so we have different standards for certain players. And so Diego Fagundes, although he had an okay game, like in this game, he has to be the guy. Like he has to be the one to carry this team with Driussi out of the team, with Danny not there. He has to be the guy. And like he was fine, good enough at times, but like he did not step up and was not the guy that we needed him to be on the night. And again, that sounds harsh, but it's just, we have to hold him to a different standard. And I think he probably holds himself to a different standard. And so even though I think he played better than some of the other people on the field, it still wasn't quite good enough. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, I think one of the bigger stories is injuries in this game. So Jussi Zardes comes out in the 18th minute. Maxi Urruti comes on. Maxi Urruti ends up subbing out later in the game. And so in the post-game press conference, Josh Wolf is acting like Zardes is going to be out for a while with an adductor injury. And then if Urruti is also injured, like what does striker look like for the next the next game immediately, but then after that, like how long are these guys out and what is it going to look like after that?
Yeah, well, so the Maxi thing is super interesting because I was just reading this tweet from Michel Sanchez from a couple days ago, and Maxi says he doesn't know why he came out and that he doesn't believe that he's injured. So there's like some discrepancy there that
interesting.
I'm very interested to read about. But yeah, Maxi says, honestly, I have no idea why the change. I'm here for the team. I'll give the maximum effort, is what he said after Josh very specifically said he was hurt, basically along the same lines as Giassi, and that's why he came out.
Interesting. I did not see that from Michelle, but that's weird.
just another weird thing in a season of weird things, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in that case, like if he wasn't actually hurt in the moment, like the only thing I could say is like maybe he was kind of struggling with something in training or whatever. And now that Zardes is out, they know Maxi might have to go longer in the next game, and so they want to save him. But it's weird that they wouldn't just say that instead of saying he was injured.
Yeah. And then just I guess the overall narrative, like Austin seems to have issues in cup matches. I believe I've said that Austin is embarrassing the entire league with a performance in defeat against Mazatlan and Violette together. What do you make of all this?
I mean, as far as like strictly looking at the statement, Austin FC lost to Mazatlan, I don't think that is embarrassing. I think because, I mean, Liga MX is considered, I think, by most people to be a higher level league than MLS. And so like Austin FC could very easily lose to the worst team in MLS on any given weekend. And so the fact that we could lose to the worst team in Liga MX on a given weekend, that doesn't seem that weird or embarrassing to me. I think what they should be embarrassed of is their performance and their effort on the night. That was embarrassing.
Well, did you want to talk about any other players before we preview the Juarez match and maybe look at what the season looks like going forward?
I mean, yeah, it's cool to see Valentino Well get into the game. I mean, other than that, not a lot stood out in a good or a bad way. It was just like everything was pretty bad.
All right. Well, in that case, let's go ahead and take a break, and we will talk about Juarez. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Covert Ford. The Coverts have been meeting the needs of local car buyers for 114 years because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale.
In addition to supporting car buyers, Covert's an important part of the soccer community and the official automotive partner of Austin FC.
Right now, Covert has a deal on a 2023 Ford F-150 XL Super Crew, stock number 2230076. The MSRP is $53,815, but with dealer discounts and package savings, it can be yours for only $45,299, plus tax, title, and license. Also, with approved Ford credit, you can get it for 0% APR over 36 months or 3.9% over 60 months.
If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, be sure to check out covertford.com.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. Thanks to Sage Wilson Realty, we'll be giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. So fill out the form in the show notes and enter for your chance to win.
Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Realty. So if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, so we just talked about the Mazatlan game. Mazatlan and Juarez are going to be playing in Austin on Tuesday night. Where does this put Austin FC in the group table at the moment?
So what Austin FC needs out of this is for Mazatlan to win and Austin to beat Juarez over the weekend, or otherwise things get very, very strange and confusing in a way that we could not figure out between the two of us from looking at the tiebreaker rules right before we started recording.
Yeah, Austin FC fans need to be hoping for a Mazatlan win, because if that is what happens, then all Austin needs to do is win and you're through. I think there's a scenario within all of this where a draw also gets you through, but it puts Austin's fate in its own hands. If Juarez beats Mazatlan, it gets super messy and maybe really complicated for Austin to advance here. So Tuesday is gonna tell a lot about what Austin FC's future looks like in this tournament.
So one thing we know about for the weekend, that you touched on this, but again, Austin's going to be playing short staff. So it seems like there's a pretty good chance that Driussi's not going to be available. Said Danny Pereira has a sprain and a weakness, so he's kind of iffy. Rigoni's 3+ weeks out. Driussi was individual work at the end of the week, so he may or may not be back. And then Vicenen, we got sort of an injury blow here where he's going to be out for possibly another 2 months, which is probably part of the reason why Hedges comes in. So there's a lot of talent and a lot of money being spent on people who are not going to be on the field. Yeah,
I am going to be interested to see if I think on Tuesday or Wednesday night when Toronto plays their first Leagues Cup match, it'll be interesting to see if Matt Hedges, I mean, it's the Moon Tower curse. We're recording on Monday night, so this is almost certainly going to get announced on Tuesday morning.
Come out tomorrow, yeah.
But if it's not, I'd be very curious to be looking at the Toronto FC lineup for that first Leagues Cup match, and is Matt Hedges in it? If we haven't gotten an announcement, then that might be a good sign. But even if he does come now, it's going to be hard to know, in these circumstances, maybe he would come and step straight into the lineup. But just given Josh Wolf's track record, it seems hard to believe that he's going to practice with a guy for 2 days and then put him in the lineup.
So sort of given this injury situation, if you were in charge, do you play your best 11? Do you hope for a good outcome, or do you just take the next 3 weeks off and heal up and hope for a strong run into the rest of the season? It was up to you. What do you do?
I think you really look at the result between Mazatlan and Juarez and see where you are in that table. If Juarez wins and it's going to be Austin needs to win 3-0 in order to go through or something like that, I think then maybe okay, anybody who's didn't sleep well the night before, you get benched.
Give him a break, yeah.
And just play safe as far as health goes. I was not a proponent of that at the start of this tournament, but like we've stacked the deck against ourselves. If that gets stacked even more against us with this other result, then I think like, okay, let's like cut our losses here. But if it is a situation where like Austin FC needs a win to get through to the next round, I'd say again, still don't push anybody who's maybe even iffy on injuries. But aside from that, play a team that you think is the most competitive without risking health, and try to win it. Because again, why not? Like if we lose, we're sitting out for 2 or 3 weeks after that. So I don't think that's useful to a team. Like 1 week, sure, that's helpful at this point in the season, but 3 weeks is not really. So I think it's not going to hurt us to try to play one more week if that seems like it's on the table to be taken.
Yeah, I think that's the way I would approach it too, because 3 weeks does seem like a long time right now to sit out. And I wonder if some of these teams that get knocked out early, the MLS sides will end up like maybe playing friendlies against each other or something just to keep in match shape.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that in the Leagues Cup rules that they're not allowed to play friendlies, but I imagine that has more to do with like drawing attendance away from Leagues Cup games. So maybe if they did it behind doors, that wouldn't be against the rules. Like 2 teams that are out of the tournament, okay, let's play a friendly against each other.
I don't know. Well, let's talk about Juarez, which imagine we can both admit we don't know a ton about. I don't know how much research you've done on them. I like read as many articles as I could find, including the striker preview of the Leagues Cup is going to be generally my knowledge around the team.
Well, tell us everything you know, and then I'll see if I can fill in any gaps
Okay.
with the Y Scout footage I watched today.
Okay, so they finished 16th in the Clausura last year. Probably generally considered to have the biggest roster overhaul of any team in the summer in Liga MX. Brought in a new executive, brought in a sporting director, brought in a new coach, I think, brought in several new players, and have got off to an impressive start in the second. I always mess this up in the Apertura, in the opening part of this campaign, with victories at Club America and Toluca. So they're off to a good start. People should not take them lightly because they are better than they performed last season.
Yeah, looking at some of their standout players, I know for Mazatlan, there was some names that engaged MLS fans would have recognized, but not that many and not really big names. It's a little bit more recognizable on this one. So you've got Chaca Rodriguez, who U.S. and Mexican national team fans will know because he played a lot for the Mexican national team over the last several years, played for Tigres for a while. And they have a lot of guys who have played previously for really big teams in Mexico who are now playing for Juarez, which is a newer and considered somewhat of a smaller team, but have a lot of pedigree as far as their players go. So Chaca Rodriguez, they've got, what is his name? Aviles Hurtado, who has played for some big Mexican teams. You mentioned Aitor Garcia. Sorry, I didn't think you mentioned. You put it in the notes here. Aitor Garcia is a Spanish attacker who has looked good in the footage I've seen. They have a winger named Agustin Ursi, who is from Argentina, I believe. He's a pretty exciting attacker. And then also hardcore U.S. national team fans will recognize this name, but Bofo Salcedo, who played for U.S. youth national teams and kind of flirted with the first team for a while, but never really panned out, has had a pretty good career in Mexico, plays for Juarez now, and looks like a really dangerous winger in this system. So have some big-ish names and some really strong attackers playing in the team. Also, another name, Alfredo Talavera, who has played a lot of games for the Mexican national team. He's their captain, good goalkeeper, but he got a concussion in their last league match, so probably not going to be back for this tournament. I don't know anything about the backup, so we'll see what he looks like. But as far as their playing style, they have the nickname Bravos, and I think that is a very apt nickname for this team. They have some good attacking talent, and they play boldly with the ball, to put it in a word. But they play, I'll say the word direct, not in the sense, usually when we're talking about direct in soccer, it means like long balls, route one stuff. They don't play direct that way as much, but when they get into the attacking third, they absolutely go for it. They'll shoot from distance, they'll throw numbers into the box, and just attack with a lot of gusto going forward. And so they beat America in the season opener this just a few weeks ago with 2 long distance shots, kind of out of nowhere, like against the run of play. And so they really go for it with the ball, but they can also be caught out because of that. They watching them play, they seem to be pretty easily pulled out of shape with ball movement. And so it's a thing that Austin can take advantage of. And like, they need to capitalize on that early in the game, like they didn't do against Mazatlan, because there were chances to be had and they just didn't take them. And so if they can do that against this team, I think they stand a chance. But if they put on a performance and don't, like, unable to get any chances or goals in the first half, this team like fights and will send everything they have into the attack as a game looks like it's there to be had. And that scares me if Austin gets into that situation against this team.
So you mentioned that a lot of it just comes down to execution for Austin and taking advantage of the opportunities they have, especially early on. Given the health situation, like, is there reason to believe that Austin will do anything differently? What is it? What is a different outcome? Is it just the players try harder? Like, what do you see?
Honestly,
yes. Thing that'll change.
Honestly, yes. They just need to try harder, because it's not, like I said, the system was not broken. They were getting good opportunities and just not capitalizing on them. So if you just run a little bit harder, like focus, concentration, execution, these are things that like the players have to just do. Like, you can't coach it. You can't, like, and we've seen it from them, is the frustrating thing. If they just weren't good enough, then that's fine. But we've seen these exact players do these exact things in these exact scenarios, and they just didn't do it, and they just don't do it sometimes. And so I don't know if the heat's getting to them, if maybe there is something to, like, not like the coaching staff and Wolf not getting them prepared for these other tournaments or whatever. I don't know what it is, but there's something there where it really is focus and concentration and effort is the only difference between this and the other games that they've played.
That's super frustrating. I guess that was the theme too. I think throughout the post-game press conference that, like, Stuver talked about and Wolf talked about and others. And Stuver, like, specifically was visibly frustrated, I think, after the match. So hopefully with a week in between these last performance and this one, Austin will be able to sort of get their head right and be able to perform differently than they did against Mazatlan, or it will make for another very disappointing cup performance. And we'll just sort of embolden the people who tend to be super critical of the way that Austin approaches cups, with good reason so far.
Yeah. I guess you're out of town. I'm trying to decide. I'm leaving town the end of this week. I'm tempted to go to the Mazatlan Juarez game just because it's like a cool soccer game happening in town that is like actually competitive. So I'm tempted to go, but I don't know if I'll actually make it out or not.
Are you going to take a press pass, or are you just going to go?
No, I'll just go. Like I said, the fact that you can't drink beer in the press box is kind of a deal breaker, especially
That's
when
fair.
I don't need to be up in the press box to do what we do. So I'd rather sit out in the stands and drink beer. But on the other hand, air conditioning.
That's true for sure.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up, Jeremiah?
No, let's go ahead and wrap it up.
All right. Before we finish, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on X. Is that what the website is called now?
I don't know. My app is still Twitter, so I'm just going to go with it until I see something else.
I'm going to type in twitter.com until that stops working, but you can do the same. Type in twitter.com. Find me at LVHero87, Jeremiah at JBentley_ATX, and then Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and what's the other one called?
Threads.
YouTube and Threads.
Oh, and YouTube too. Yeah.
Sign up for the Patreon. We'll send you some cool stuff. Visit the Striker website with the code MoonTower23 with a capital M to get a discount. Jeremiah, what can folks look out for there?
Yeah, there's good Leagues Cup coverage from across the tournament, not just for Austin. So be sure to check that out and get some insight into some clubs that you maybe have never seen play. You can learn a little bit about, so you sound smart in front of your friends.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to review the FC Juarez match and then maybe preview a knockout round match. Maybe we'll do an interview and some listener questions or something. But until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothing, you never.
La gente
Oh my God.